namaste, and hello. I'm Maryam Qadri, and I'm here with Dr. Gulam Dastagir, and this is the Essential Spirituality YouTube channel where we discuss all things related to spiritual practice, the transcendent, and universality. So today we're going to explore questions our subscribers had related to guides, guidance, and the guiding relationship. Would you like to? Ready?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so I'll start with the first one. So the first question was, how does one search for a guide?
So salams again and welcome to everyone. Namaskar. This is a very interesting question as to how does one search for a guide? And the answer that comes to mind is more than anything else with sincerity. All that is required on the spiritual path in so many ways, if you desire guidance, is just a sincerity in desiring that guidance. If our minds are clear that this is what we really want, some guidance on our way, then surely the guiding principle, which the Sufis refer to as Al-Hadi, um, also called the Guru, also God, uh, will surely manifest that guidance that we need in one way or the other. It's a very natural process. Uh, there is no pushing this in a sense. It doesn't require any sort of looking up to something or someone, uh, trying to fit someone in the mantle of guide, nothing of that nature. It's an entirely inward journey. Spirituality, for the most part, almost fully is an internal, inward journey. And as a result of that, the guide also resides deep within our hearts. All we are doing is connecting within ourselves, and the guidance comes forth. Now, with time, if this internal guide, which we often refer to as the divine, again Al Hadi, Sri Guru, has to manifest itself in a human form as a companion on our journey, as a guide on our journey, then that can happen. And that does happen in the form of a murshid or a sheikh or a teacher or a guru in the human form. But again, there's no need to search for a guru per se. The guru will come depending upon um, your desperation for guidance, and that's the essential um, requirement for guidance on this path. That's the beauty of it, actually.
So do you feel one has to have a guru, or like it isn't necessary for a guru to come? Because you said the guru will come, as that's a given.
It is definitely a given in the sense that the guru can be, like I said, can take a human form, and when necessary, it will do so. The guiding principle will do so, and it can be through a variety of different teachers, or it could, in time, it goes to one person. In general, that's what tends to happen. Um, do does everyone absolutely have to have a guide? In any field, if you are trying to achieve something in that field, trying to go progress on the field, you'll always take um, the help of someone who is an expert and knows the field. So I always at least to my own mind, always think in terms of working out. That's a very simple analogy for me. And so when I first entered a gym, I had a personal trainer, someone who took me along the path because they had done a lot more than I had. And so in that sense, in the field of spirituality too, there are those people who've spent a lot of time, who have gained a lot, and who have a lot to offer. It would be silly for me not to accept that offering. I can fumble around and perhaps find my way in some way or the other. But if someone already knows it, it just makes my life that much easier. So you can make it a DIY project, but like all DIY projects, there's always a danger that it could get a little messy.
Also, there's always like a YouTuber or a book or some resource, right? There's always a resource that even the person who does it on their own ultimately usually has to consult. Like very few people actually do something purely on their own. Like they usually, sometimes you can fiddle around with it, but usually they're consulting someone. So it's in a way you're describing, like I like the athletic analogy where you're describing people who are, of course, coaches and spiritual guides. One may not want to equate the two, but the idea is that you have someone who's been in the field, someone who has a lot of experience, and because of that experience they have wisdom, and they're able to impart that to others and to help them kind of gain ground much faster than if one were going it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one little thing to always keep in mind, and that the other aspects of life are sort of cut and dry because they work on a corporeal material plane. So it's the principles are a little more concrete. When it comes to spirituality, we're talking about something essentially that is transcendent, that which is beyond something that we can see, sense, and we connect with a faculty that we're not very um, used to using as such. That's become a little rusted. And so it's very hard to know, okay, who's an expert in this field.
Right,
And
and
so,
I think that's actually one of the dangers of the path for
right.
people curious about it or interested in it is like, how do you know someone who's just making claims or someone who's kind of full of themselves versus someone who's like authentically realized and really
That's definitely one aspect. And
yeah.
therefore there's no point searching for a guide.
Mm-hmm.
We go back to the original premise that there's no need to search for a guide outside.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to search for the guide with sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want guidance, then that guidance will come to you one way or the other. It cannot be withheld from you because that's a basic spiritual law. If you seek sincerely, it shall be given to you. There is no denial on this on the spiritual journey, but you have to be sincere in your seeking, and that sincerity is expressed through consistency more than anything else.
Yeah.
So if you're consistent in our spiritual practices and we are focused that this is what we really want, guidance will come one way or the other. No need to make someone your guide.
Yeah, who comes to my mind is Salman Farsi.
Yeah, the very famous Sufi and
The
companion.
Persian, right?
Yes.
He is so amazing because he grew up Persian and he wasn't satisfied with the faith that he was born into, and then he took up Christianity, and I think he had kind of some of his teachers were a little corrupt from what I understood in the stories, and so but even so his sincerity came through. Right. And so he was, I think, sold into slavery, was he not?
Yes.
Yeah, and then in that way he made his way without intending to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then everything was like revealed to him. He's considered one of the greatest Sufi masters.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah. And that's often the way with mysticism in the Indian traditions, for example. Um, the guide is very important in so many ways. But the guide is not a human being. The guide is God manifesting in different ways. And even if the human form is flawed or even a fraud, yeah, it matters not because your sincerity will bring through the fraud something that is real and something that is useful for you. So again, the sincerity is inward. Again, it's not a matter of projecting what you feel is the correct guide onto someone else. No, it's always inward, it's always inward, it's always inward. And when you persist with that, the guidance comes, even from flawed personalities. Because ultimately, in this physical world, everything and everyone is going to have some blemish somewhere. So take the guidance that inspires your heart, and that's all you have to do. And keep using that inspiration to further your inward journey. There is little more to it than that. So, how to find a guide? Be sincere. Be consistent in your spiritual practice. Keep an attitude of learning and universality, and sincerely seek. And for sure, the guidance will come. It's as simple as that. There's no need again to look at other people to make people your guides. This is a very common sort of a fallacy that people choose their guide. It's not a matter of choice at all. A guide just comes naturally. And so that's at least my perspective on it. And in my life, it played out in the same way. I don't think I did anything as such to bring Babuji, our teacher, Hazrat Sahib, into my life. It just so
Yeah.
happened.
Like in your case, I believe, right, it was a family friend introduced him to your family. Your
Right.
family was in a time of need, and they said, we know someone who's
Right.
who's very great and can help your mother. And he did, and
Yeah.
and your whole family became devoted to him thereafter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and like in our own case, like I was really seeking out a husband, and then my husband had Babuji, and then I was like, I'm not sure about this because I grew up Protestant, and so it's a fine. All these ideas are very foreign to me, but at that time anyway. And so then I found Babuji, and even for my parents, they were very nervous because they didn't know anything about this idea of a guide or a peer or a guru, and but they just saw that there was like such consistent wisdom in his advice to us and his guidance that my mom said your dad and I just stopped worrying.
Yeah.
They just didn't, and even though it's a totally different religious framework, it's a totally different spiritual perspective from what they're used to. It was just, it's just very nice.
Yeah. And initially, when Babuji first came in our lives, I had no conceptualization either. I did have the conceptualization of mysticism because I think it's difficult to grow up in a place like India and not have some idea coming from a Hindu family what mystics are.
Right.
They're just embedded in your cultural ethos. So you're familiar with this idea of a great master or the Jedi master as such.
Yeah.
So it's always there in the back of your mind, but it wasn't until much later. I was a young kid when Babuji was first introduced to our family, and then it was much later in my late teens, early 20s that I sincerely sought guidance. And luckily for me, Babuji was there, and so the guidance just came quite easily. So it was very, very interesting. I was blessed to have that relationship.
Very nice. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, yes.
I'll go on to another question. Is okay?
By all means, yes.
Okay. I have to.